Hey guys, it's Chris, and this is going to be my Walking Dead Season 6 Episode 1 review. So October's finally here, and Rick and the gang is back kicking some Walker ass, because apparently 2.5 or 3 years ago or so in that timeline, a virus broke out, and I believe there was just a show about that lasted about 6 episodes that was supposed to kind of explain all that, but we really never found out why that all started. So, episode 1 of season 6, it was okay for me, and the show mainly revolved around this big plan to have a mass exodus of walkers from this giant rock quarry that Rick had ran across when he was with Morgan. And they went this time with the non-linear storytelling where they were doing kind of flashbacks in black and white, things that had happened between the end of season 5 and the beginning of season 6, which was only apparently maybe a few days or possibly a week or two. So it did pick up right where it left off, and all the current real-time things were in color, so that was very interesting. I kind of dug that in the non-linear fashion. So again, it seemed to be a few days, possibly a week or two between the time that Rick shot the doctor and Morgan was reintroduced to Rick with Daryl, up until the time of this show where they ran across this big rock quarry, essentially trapping thousands of walkers. And that was explained to be a reason why Alexandria, this place that seemed to be relatively safe where they don't see a lot of walker action, very few walkers at their gates, why nobody there has any real experience living out in the wild, all the good shit that Rick and them have to do when you're out in it, basically clueless about the whole apocalypse thing that happened in that other show I was talking about. Which I don't quite buy that whole story, because there are a lot of other directions that walkers could come from to approach Alexandria, but I digress. So again, in the black and white scenes were all kind of flashback scenes, what happened before this big plan, and it was really pretty straightforward. It was really Morgan being reintroduced to Rick, Morgan being kind of acclimated to the group and getting to know everybody because he basically only knew Rick. It kind of established what was going on with some of the characters. It showed a scene with Deanna, who is the leader of Alexandria, except now she's really not because Rick is, talking to Gabriel saying, fuck you, you were wrong about Rick being crazy and dangerous because he's got the experience. We did see Tara wake up, so she had been in a coma from last season when she got injured. Of course, Eugene runs in and was happy about that because there's some odd love interest there. Morgan and Rick do a lot of catching up, and Rick telling Morgan about how he's changed and, you know, how Alexandria is and how these people don't really get it. And Morgan seems to think, you know, no, you're the same guy, Rick. You're the same guy that I met back in Atlanta. Although there were some moments when they were leading up to this big plan of theirs, which I'll get to in a minute, where they're starting to introduce a little bit of friction between Rick and Morgan. For example, Deanna didn't want the guy that killed her husband buried within the Alexandria walls, so she sent Rick and Morgan out to bury him, and Rick just wanted to kind of throw his body out there and leave him and say fuck him, but Morgan was like, no, he needs a proper burial. And that's when, of course, Ron shows up and Rick saves him. Rick kind of plays linebacker and tackles him and saves him from falling over the cliff into this big pit that Rick and Morgan had just stumbled upon, and that's when Rick realizes why Alexandria seems so safe and why they don't get a lot of walker action. They show Morgan zooming in on the pit, the big rock quarry it seems, and there are some trucks set up. So of course my question immediately, and I'm sure yours as well, was who set up those trucks? I believe it's probably the wolves, because we know they are prone to using zombies as weapons and trapping them and making so-called zombie traps, because we saw just a hint of that last year when Daryl and Morgan ran across that zombie trap with the tractor trailer. We do know they are aware of the wolves because of that, so they did kind of mention that they are aware there's a threat out there. I don't think they know yet quite how big of a threat that is and how soon it's coming. We did see a scene where Rick invites Morgan to move in with him and Michonne, because apparently he had him staying in a separate location. He just said he didn't take any chances anymore. And Morgan said, no, I understand, you shouldn't take chances. But then he kind of realizes after talking to him that he's the same guy, and he trusts him. He lets him hold Judith, so that's kind of the ultimate token of trust is, hey, here, hold my child. We didn't see a lot from Sasha, Carol, Maggie, except for a couple little scenes. We did see a scene where Sasha and Abraham ride together in this car to remove the zombies from the pit and get them away from Alexandria. But apparently Abraham kind of thought Sasha might have wanted to go out and die, and he might be in the same boat, so it kind of hinted that Abraham's kind of losing his shit a little bit. And again, in the black and white flashback scenes, they show the big meeting they have with the whole town of Alexandria, and that's where Rick kind of proposes this plan. We also saw a scene where there are a few new characters introduced, and I think the main character there is going to be Corey Hawkins, who plays Dr. Dre in Straight Outta Compton, and he seems like he's going to be around a while. at least until he gets bit. We did see Rick talk to Ron's mother, and he still seems to have a little bit of interest in her, so there may be still a love interest there, although she's very standoffish now. He did, after all, shoot her husband in the head. And the main conflict in this episode was between Rick and Carter. Carter was rushed from Vegas vacation, and he didn't last very long. They did show a scene where Eugene walked in trying to get something out of a food store, and he overheard this Carter character talking about killing Rick because they allow Rick to keep on running shit. They're all going to die. He didn't trust him. Basically, he's just a pussy and didn't want to do anything. He wanted to stay in the gates and never go out. So that led to a confrontation between him and Rick when Rick walks in because he had a gun pulled on Eugene, and the other characters didn't really seem to be listening to him, but he wanted to essentially get rid of Rick. So Rick did a badass disarm, took his gun from him, and threatened him, but he kept his cool and he didn't kill him, and that set up a little bit of tension between them, and he made him work with them, apparently being some type of engineer, to strengthen a wall during this big zombie herd migration that happened throughout the show. So Rick gives Carter a speech and says, hey, you can join us and work with us, or I can kill you right here. So they at least seem to make up a little bit during the actual live run of the zombie parade. They seem to come to an understanding. There was a cool scene, one of those flashback scenes where Carter and them were building this little wall to hold the zombies in during this, right turn when they were going to lead them away from the sanctuary. A few walkers came through the woods, and Rick told everybody to stay back because he wanted Carter to kill them and see if he could do it. He was just testing him. Everybody had to run up and kill the walkers. Carter didn't do it, and that started a little bit of tension between Morgan and Rick, and I think we're going to see that continue a little bit. But the big plan was to unblock these trucks and lead this herd of walkers down a few roads, taking a few turns, and lead them 20 or 30 miles west away from Alexandria so they wouldn't ever have to deal with the problem of them getting out at some point uncontrolled, which was kind of a ambitious plan. I didn't really buy the plan thing because they were basically making noise and firing flares and leading this big group out, hoping they would just stay on the roads behind them, following Daryl on a motorcycle and Sasha in a car. So I thought it was kind of cool, but I didn't really buy that like the herd at the very end, because this was a pretty damn big herd of zombies, would actually stay in line and just keep following the rest of them. But they were using noise. If they got out of line or started walking off the road, they would go shoot their guns and get them chasing them back again on the roads. So at this point, Carter had kind of made up with Rick a little bit, said, you know what, you were right, I appreciate what you're doing. They shook hands. He said he volunteered to take the front to kind of get some of the zombies back on track. And of course, a zombie jumps out of a tree and bites Carter right in the face. He starts screaming, and that starts to lead some of the zombies off the path, and they can't have that because the whole plan relies on them following this path of roads they had picked out and laid out with some colorful balloons they happen to have in Alexandria. So Rick has to go end up killing him anyway because he was making too much noise. He was already bitten, so he stuck an ice pick through his neck or whatever it was he was holding. So we didn't get to see good old Russ from Vegas Vacation last very long. I thought he would actually stick around for a while longer, but I guess he has other commercials to make or something. I think that was kind of important because it did show that Rick, gave him a chance after having a gun pulled on him a day earlier or whatever the time frame there was. And then he gave him a chance, he put him into the group as a leader, and he actually worked with him. They kind of made amends, and then he goes off and gets his damn face bitten. And I loved Rick's line actually when he tried to pump the group up, and he said, "This is an insane world. We have to come to them before they come for us." So that was pretty cool. It's Rick stepping up as a leader, kind of reestablishing himself as the de facto leader there, even though there had been some question about it in the previous season because he was kind of losing his shit and he wanted to kill everybody. So I think it kind of pulls Rick back a little bit because he was kind of getting out of control, and he may go even darker, we don't know yet. On the very last leg, of course, where Daryl and them was just going to lead him in a straight line 20 or 30 more miles down the road and then come home, we hear a giant horn blowing. The horn seemed to be coming from Alexandria. And of course all the walkers started heading straight to the woods towards the sound of the horn. After all this work, all this planning, they get the zombies to make their final turn. It seems to work, and then bam. That's of course the big question. Who blew the horn? It showed that Rick was actually pretty stable. We all thought last year he was getting darker and darker and darker and turning into Shane from the first couple seasons. That's my question to you guys. Who do you think blew the horn? And also in the actual pit, who do you think set up the trucks there to trap them there in the first place? I personally think it's the wolves. It's the big bad wolf. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. How was the premiere episode of season 6 to you? How did you like it? What didn't you like about it? Let me know in the comments. Thanks again, you guys, for everything. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and share. I appreciate all the support. I'm going to continue doing Walking Dead throughout the season, and of course I'll always continue doing Game of Thrones Q&As, Star Wars Q&As, and other Star Wars related videos as we approach The Force Awakens. In the meantime, you can click here on a video that me and Chad did from our house where we actually talked about Bigfoot. Yes, completely different from what I usually do on this channel, but it was a fun thing we had talked about doing for a couple months. And for you Star Wars nerds, click here on the last video I did on The Force Awakens and what I believe to be the basic plot or synopsis of the movie itself. So that one definitely contains potential spoilers, although I could be completely wrong. Check those out. Let me know what you think. Thanks again, you guys. Thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe to get everything, and we'll see you next time.